exactly. So let me just 3 minutes really, guys. Futuregames Warsaw is starting this September in Warsaw, in Poland, in the capital of Poland. This is our sixth school. We already covered the map of Sweden, having schools in Karlstad, Skellefteå, Boden and Stockholm. Right now we are opening 5th school in Malmö. We have cooperation with New Zealand, with Polytechnic there. We are also implementing our model of education in Norway, and we are now in progress of opening 3 educations in Poland. This will be game design, game art and game programming. Warsaw is a great city to live in. I would say it's a perfect scenography for being a student, with a lot of cultural and touristic offer and a lot of partying going on here. So you are more than welcome to join us in Warsaw. Why you should do it? We have over 20 years educated, I think, a lot, much over the 14% of people working professionally in Swedish game dev. We have a model that's very dynamic, so we don't have our own staff. Like, it's not only our own staff you get education from. It's people like Julia, heads of educations, are the base, are mentors for our students, but we also work with people contracted for particular parts, modules of education, and they create like 80% of the tutors in our school. So you may one day you may have lectures from people from USA, Venezuela, Turkey, Sweden, UK. So and this is what's happening also in Poland. We will have tutors from Poland. This webinar is about inclusion, inclusivity. This is what we are also all about. We have already 25% of our students are girls. We want to raise numbers of girls participating in game dev in Poland as well, from being around 12 right now to minimum 25 in 2 years. So this is ambitious plan, and this webinar is like a starting point for this. Our model is hands-on education, and it gives it's very effective. Over 90% of our graduates get job right after internship. Internship is a part of your 2 years course. In Sweden, we cover all educations in game dev, excluding sound yet so far, but we are working on it as well. In Poland, we start the set with game artist, game designer, and game programmer. 3 educations, 2 years, 2 years, and 2.5 years. It will be on-site, 100% from Monday to Friday, and you are welcome to join us. We have 40 classes running in Sweden, around 1,200 students per year, and we publish games of our students. So if you create 4 games during 2 years, this 3rd and 4th project end up being published on Steam or itch. Our model is also to closely cooperate with the game dev industry. That's what's happening in Sweden. Hazelight, basically the core of this company, is created by Futuregames alumni. This is one of the most successful of our cooperations. Other is Starbreeze, also admitting that and giving us very good references to our students, and taking eagerly our students as interns. So I think I took enough of your time. Right now I'll be happy to pass the stage to Julia and also Joanna, or Joanna, as you prefer. And we will start discussion with our female students from Sweden, and they will share their stories. So Julia, the stage is yours. Thanks.
Wonderful, Piotr. Thank you so much. First of all, once again, hello, everyone, especially to all the new people that have joined during Piotr's presentation. My name is Julia, and I am head teacher for game design in the north of Sweden. What I have been working with was, of course, all the students and all the game projects that we make during the school year, but of course also so much more in organizing projects, organizing courses, etc., etc. My goal within the education is to make sure people come in and they get graduate and work at the company they wish to work for. Perhaps they come in with a dream, I want to work for AAA or I want to work for indie games studios, and then they get to achieve that dream. And that is my role within the education. Today, I have gathered with me 3 students, and we also have Joanna here helping us with a few questions and interviewing. But we're going to take that in the second part of this webinar. The first part of the webinar, we will be discussing how the school life is, what it's like to be a woman in the games industry. And for the panel here, I have invited Johanna Louisa, Sarah, and Malin, who are going to introduce themselves in just a second. We're going to start off by discussing what it's like to be a woman in the games industry in Sweden, what it's like studying at Future Games. And we're going to cover all the basics and all the questions you may have. So feel free to write everything in the chat. We'll have a short Q&A at the end of this webinar section, but also we can take questions throughout as well, if you have any. Once that is over, we're going to switch to the second part of this webinar, where Joanna is going to be interviewing Agnieszka and partly me as well for the perspective of AAA and educations and perhaps indies. And once again, we're going to raise the same topics, but on a bit of a different scale that time. If that sounds good, let us start. I would love to pass the mic to, let's see, to Sarah. Sarah, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yep, my name is Sarah. I'm a game design student at Futuregames Stockholm. I have a background in game design and project management. I am a woman in games ambassador. I also do a lot of like rep stuff for school. So I'm a student rep for my class. I do some marketing. I also do, I'm in the board for our student union, Game Changers. And that's about it for me.
Wonderful. Malin, please introduce yourself as well.
Hello, my name is Malin and I live in Umeå in Sweden, and I go remotely on the project manager education in Skellefteå. My background is in restaurant business and I have been a manager there, but I wanted to do what I really love, and it's all about games. So yeah, it's me.
All right, Johanna Louisa, who are you?
Hello, my name is Johanna Louisa. I study project management, IT, and games, the same as Malin, but I am on site in Skellefteå. I have a background in the restaurant business. I worked for the same company for 8.5 years, and I worked my way up to restaurant manager. But then I also wanted to do something like where my heart was, and that was games. So I ended up in the project management class.
All right, that's awesome. Thank you so much. And Joanna, please introduce yourself as well.
Hi, my name is Joanna Keller. I've been a marketing manager and a marketing lead for the past 2 years in video games. Before games, I did corporate marketing at corporations such as Mattel, Amazon, and Deloitte. And I've always wanted to work in games, didn't thought it was possible, but here I am 2 years later. I currently work for No More Robots remotely from Poland, and I'm super excited to be here. I'm an ambassador with Women in Games as well, and Women in Games International, where I played a mentor role for girls in the US. So super excited to be here and looking forward to both parts of the webinar.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. Super excited to have you as well. All right, but for everyone in this webinar, and of course for our participants, I'm very curious, like, how did you end up, thinking of going into the games industry? What interested you, or what was the main motivator for it? Johanna Louisa, you mentioned that it was something that your heart desired. Could you perhaps elaborate a bit more? Why the games industry?
Yeah, I've ever since I was young, I've played games. So that has always been, I've never thought that it was something that you could work with until I saw like what that Futuregames had educations in like game development. I never thought that it was even like an opportunity for me. And then like, yeah, when I saw the opportunity, I took it. And since I was a manager before, and I know that I am not very like technically skilled, I'm not fit to be a programmer, I wouldn't be a good game designer, but I know that I am good with managing teams. So that's why I chose to be a project manager.
So as far as I remember, modeling is also in the project management education. What was the driving force for you, Malin, to join the industry and the education?
So I have a background with having a bar in Stockholm. So my customers were from EA and DICE. So I had the ability to actually try out the games and have like their, I don't know, their stories about making games. And it made me so interested in actually being involved as well. But I didn't have the grades to actually join a university course. So I was putting it on the shelf. And then when I saw that Futuregames were like, having the project manager education, I was just like, I really need to apply. So I fixed my gradings and I did apply. So here I am.
So you mentioned you actually got in touch with the industry even before joining the industry itself. How has that inspired you to follow the career path you're following right now?
Oh, it seems so much fun. You know, you get to like follow them on release parties and see what's going on in the creative phase. It's just so amazing to have actually like a game artist sitting and write on your napkins and stuff like that. So it gets, I don't know, I really love the creative phase. So to just see that, it inspires me.
That's wonderful. Honestly, this is such an amazing story. Sarah, I'm curious about you. How did you get into the games industry?
Well, it wasn't planned. I studied a pretty tough education and I wanted to get into like science, but I didn't have that good of grades. So I started working and I realized, oh, I like leadership. I found a course in leadership and game design, and I just got into that, and it just threw me into the path of a game developer. During my high school, I did meet DICE, but I didn't really think I could be a game designer or a game developer in general, because it was, so manly kind of at the time that I was like, I can't be a game developer. But then the more I met like game developers after that, I felt like, oh yeah, no, I definitely like this, and it's fitting everything I want to do. That's, technical and theoretical and a lot of like different kinds of subjects in one. And it's a beautiful mix between like everything, and you can do anything you want. You can be a leader, you can be a follower, you can be a designer, a programmer, like you can choose whatever kind of creativity, like level of creativity, level of leadership, level of, anything you want. It's all within the development, so to speak.
Actually, you brought up so many interesting points in this discussion. I will definitely get back to those, but first, Joanna, how did you get into the games industry?
Yeah, my path is quite unusual, I think. I'm a marketer who transitions into games as an already like working professional in marketing. I studied accounting and finance actually in the UK at business school, and I always imagined myself as a corporate girl working in finance, accounting. And I actually went into game dev because I was severely burnt out from my corporate jobs. It was also because of the pandemic and because my contract ended with Amazon at the time of the start of the pandemic. I went to live with my parents again for the first time in like 10 years and really thought again about my priorities, what I want to do, what I want to try out. Video games have been a part of my student life because I wrote articles and did a radio show on video games actually for a year and a half. with a live radio show and reviews of games. And I actually went into 11-bit Studios as my first job in the industry, which was, the studio that made This War of Mine, which was the game which I reviewed as one of the first ones for the newspaper. So the history really made a circle for me, and it does these days, because now I'm working for a UK company as well. Again, after so many years, after coming back from Brexit to Poland. So my journey started with doing social media as part of fun hobby I did after hours. I ran a Facebook group together with some people for a TV series. It was Ugly Betty, like the Polish version, the sequel for it. We started the group from scratch to like 30,000 people or so. I did an Instagram with memes for the series. I did the Discord as well, did interviews with actors, and 11-bit Studios was looking for someone with social media backgrounds. And I applied for that role. I didn't know anyone in the industry. I didn't do much research apart from the games I played, and I got it. And here I am 2 years later. So it's been a very exciting ride. It's an industry where I am coming back to myself, the version of myself that I sort of, put up on the shelf when I went into corporate roles. And I've met the most wonderful people and traveled the world as well. Last year I did PAX Boston, PAX Seattle. Never thought I would go to the US. I did Gamescom as well. I did so many events in Poland, and yeah, it's been a blast. And I've worked with Women in Games as an ambassador from last year. So a year now in April, went around and did mentorship with Women in Games in the US as well, Women in Games International. And just trying to get as many women as possible into the industry, because it's exciting, it's so different, and we need different perspectives, especially in marketing, I think, because I represent marketing and social media. So the more women we can get on board, the better, and the more perspectives and more diversity, the better stories we can tell.
Absolutely. Thank you. First of all, also congratulations on your job in the industry. And once again, it's such a crazy way you got into this entire thing. What is everyone's favorite game, actually? That's one of my favorite questions. What different games do you play?
For me, it's Dragon Age and Mass Effect, because I replayed them loads of times, I think 7 or 8, from like back to back, like trilogy, and Total War. Total War was a game I spent ages playing during high school, and I was able not to sleep throughout the night because I wanted to win the campaigns. So classic Rome, Total War, that's for me, definitely.
My favorite game would have to be Overwatch, and not Overwatch 2, but Overwatch. But like if I had to only play one game for the rest of my life, it would be Zelda Majora's Mask, I think.
Yeah, I will say the opposite. I like single player. I play a lot of D&D, but I also play a lot of like video games. So I play like Subnautica. Slime Rancher 2 is currently my favorite game. I cannot stop playing it. And I tried to make a game with a jetpack, with a similar jetpack as Slime Rancher, but it's really, really hard to get it right. But yeah, I think Slime Rancher 2 right now. Subnautica is also all-time, hundreds of hours. Like I have Left 4 Dead 2 as well. I think I have 1,000 hours on that one, so it's a range of video games.
I love it too. Have you played the second one? Have you played the sequel yet? Subnautica.
Oh yeah, I played all of them over and over again.
Yeah, and for me, I have a bit of different games that I really enjoy to play. I have Overwatch because you have the teamwork, and then I have Destiny 2, also for the teamwork and doing raids and stuff together. But you also have like a platform where you can do like a lot of different things like PvP, PvE, and you can do raids, dungeons. You can do so many things in that game. So it's an open world. Hello, it's beautiful. So yeah, I'm so in love with that game. And then I actually play a lot of Hearthstone, and for me it's like I lost it a bit, but then when the Battlegrounds came I just like fell in love again. I don't know. It's a really good game.
All right, awesome. Honestly, so awesome to see the wide spectrum of games and preferences everyone has. And I think what Joanna mentioned earlier, that the more voices there are in the industry, the more unique stories and more unique games can come out of it. This is really awesome. Okay, but now that we got to know you a bit better, perhaps I would like to hear a bit more about your experience at Futuregames and how has your educational experience been so far? Perhaps what were some challenges you faced, and perhaps how was it from the women perspective, being in this education? And still, even though the numbers are a bit higher in Sweden than in Poland, it's still mostly a male-dominated industry. So how has that been for you?
Yeah, for me personally, because I come from the restaurant business, so I am used to like taking charge and not being like scared to do it because of being a female or anything. So like I haven't experienced anything different from being a girl, I would say, in my education. Of course, I've experienced in my life, but not in my education. But I don't remember where I was going with it. But some challenges could be like when you're getting your internship, because some companies say like, oh yeah, we want to, you know, have a lot of girls. We want to offer amount of percentage of girls in our company. So you have to be wary, like, okay, do they want me because they want me, or do they want me because I'm a girl? But like, what are their actual values? So yeah.
I'm going to jump on your train, Johanna Lovisa, because I also come from the restaurant business and where we have to like take place. But I haven't experienced in school any of that kind either, or even in our class, because we have like half and half almost. So it's so hard to actually describe, but I'm with you on that one with the internship. That do they offer me a spot because I'm a girl, or is it because they want me for my experience? So it's very hard to like make a line.
I'd say like I come from a slightly different perspective, considering the fact like in my game design class we don't have a lot of females right now. In comparison to the male ratio, like I have teams with only guys. But I mean, they're pretty respectful. I haven't had a lot of issues with them. There are some people that are obviously always gonna be annoying and so on. But I've had like a lot of friendship. Like we're pretty tight knit. The women in our school in general, like between artists. I was gonna say programmers, but we don't have a lot of programmers, like female programmers, but the artists and the designers are really tight. And like in general, the school itself, like the students that are really working hard are also really tight with each other. And there's not a lot of disrespect going on. I do feel like there's been instances where it is different to be a woman, and there's always going to be that, like, well, not always, but there's been like instances of where like, oh, this is happening kind of because I'm a woman, compared to like this would not happen to a man. But you kind of just learn, like, because I come also from a background of leadership, and you become much more like, hey, no, I'm talking if people talking over you, or you have to respect me, and like you really get your like I'm using a Hebrew word, but chutzpah, like you're getting your confidence when working. Like it isn't ideal, but it also like strengthens you in a way, because you also have a lot of support from a lot of women that you can share with and talk to, and a lot of the men in general are also really supportive if you talk about it.
You mentioned a very interesting thing about building connections and building friendships. I'm just curious, how difficult or easy has it been for you entering the industry and entering the class? Was it easy to make friends? Do you have many things in common? How has that been so far?
I would say it has been very easy because in our class, it might be a little bit different because we're both IT and games. So not everyone has like gaming as their hobby, but a lot of us do. So we automatically have a lot in common. So we have like a common ground to meet. So like, doesn't matter what gender you are, or where you're from or whatever, we have games. So I would say it has been quite easy.
I think I've had a rougher time with that. But it's a lot better now. Like in the beginning, it was really hard to kind of connect with people. You kind of, because we were a huge class, the game design class in Stockholm is 66 people. We had some drop off, so it was really hard to like, hey, talk to me, because 66 people trying to find friends and so on. But I knew some people from before, and I've been like, I feel very safe with people I study with currently, and like you kind of just go, like you go out and you do stuff together. You play games, like we have hosted the student union has hosted like tournaments, and we have like had a lot of events to get people together and kind of bond with each other. Even the change maker educations, we're having events and stuff with them, so we are having like the entire school is just kind of like bonding with each other. So I mean, no one is malicious in school. Like there are very few people who are wanting something bad to, like they want something bad to happen to you. So I mean, everyone is there, everyone is passionate, everyone wants to be there, and it's so easy to just bond over that. Like we love games, that's why we're there. And so you can find common grounds and everything, but you can also just like, there's a lot of stuff that I learned simply because people are so different from me. Like I don't have those interests, but they have taught me so much about so many things.
I'm also very curious to hear Joanna's perspective on this, especially since I know you have been involved in creating events for women to meet up and make friends, but also, of course, expand their industry, networking. Could you give us a brief snippet of what that is?
Sure. So basically for me, it was quite tough to meet women in senior positions so far because it's very divided in the sense that it's either director level or assistants and beginning specialists. There are not that many, at least in Polish game dev, middle managers that you could, connect with, talk to. A lot of people who are in game dev also started, from the ground up, so to speak, like the famous QA journey through to other positions. I'm one of the exceptions that I went through at the same level of a position that I started with in corporate. I went on the same level into game dev. So the coffees I'm doing since December last year are both online and offline. And we've had 2 meetings so far in Gdańsk during GAMEDEV and Warsaw meetup. I've started doing it because I was a bit frustrated not being able to meet more women, because they outrightly said to me when I was being an ambassador, attending panels like this, for example, webinars, that they just don't like the atmosphere of the meetups that are available, that they don't want to, sort of measure each other by the very masculine standards, because a lot of times I think the stereotype is still, and especially in the development itself, that it's still a guy in his 30s that's like the poster child for being a developer. And a lot of times, for example, I was the only woman during marketing presentations of games. People would mistake me for a hostess, which was flattering in the US. I mean, why not? But at the same time, it was that people assumed I would be making notes, I would be bringing coffee to meetings, and not be the one they would meet for the meeting. So the coffees that I've been doing are a way to encourage, more peer-to-peer meetups, because women sometimes, and I think in Poland, I've noticed that in the US and the UK, it's a bit different story. And I have a global perspective because of being an ambassador. They don't like talking about the accomplishments. So you cannot connect, for example, oh, I did this thing. Can you teach me how to, I don't know, better market the game on Steam? This is what I've done, because they don't talk about it as much as men do. With male colleagues, I've had so much support and so much, professional talking. How you did this, which people to follow on Discord, which mailing list to sign up to, and it's been wonderful. And I have so many male friends, but I've been missing, the sort of experience that I have as a woman. For example, if you want flexible work time, if you have, for example, would like to see stories where you are represented, not just, a shooter where it's a male character being used for all promotional assets, etc. I think a lot of times it's about encouragement, that there is space for women who don't like, the typical beer, drinks, and sausage meetups that are still prevalent in game dev. I don't mind them. I like networking. I like them since I was in corporate, and I like the atmosphere of just being able to network people outside of work. But so many voices are lost because of that, because women don't feel comfortable in those spaces. Nowadays we're talking, that we probably were gonna have a wine night or just like going drinks in a city, which was not a possibility 4 months ago. Like, it was not possible to get these women to agree to go to such a thing. They wanted to just be online with a coffee, in the comfy, clothes. But nowadays they actually want to meet up. I'm organizing something for Digital Dragons, which is a conference in Krakow in May. And hopefully gonna see some women from Facebook group. I've got 120 members so far, which exceeded my expectations. I thought it would be like 10 women meeting each other for once per month, but it grew really quickly. And I think it's a lot about, encouraging that there is space for everyone. It doesn't mean you're not welcome if you're not the poster boy of game dev. Like, the industry changed so much. Even the numbers, for players are that it's 50% nowadays. It's not skewed as it was in the 70s or 60s, but even then it was, I think, misrepresented, because women were great at Pac-Man and beating the records then, but it was not talked about. So we were always part of the industry, and it's just about showcasing and introducing new women and getting them to stay. Because that's one of the biggest problems I know as ambassador of women in games, that the women get into the industry, but they don't stay. They stay for 2 years or 3 years and they leave, a lot of times forever. So it's super important, at least for me, to know and let others know that there is a network of women who went through very difficult things, and you're not alone in any of the difficult things you went through. I think it's important to remember, and I was actually mentored when I was being a mentor during the WG US mentorship. I learned so much about myself, is that no life is original. Everybody probably at some point went through a similar situation. Even the worst ones, even the most bizarre ones, it's not original. Like, somebody must have went through something similar as well, and it's important to talk about it.
Actually, going back to the coffee meetups, who is welcome at those coffee meetups?
Basically everyone who already works in the industry and who would like to work in the industry. So it's not really, closed off to only people who are experienced. I've actually met some people who are studying game dev who'd like to learn the ropes, talk to women who are already there. At the moment, I'm making it a bit of a safe space so that I get enough women, confident in themselves when men arrive, because a lot of times, at least that's my experience, as I said, I'm coming back into the version of myself that I had to put on a shelf in corporate. I used to be much more courageous and adventurous before I joined corporate. Nowadays, I'm learning that again, how to do it. A lot of times men take over conversations and, for example, say that some topics are not important at all. So perhaps next year, I'm going to open it up to all. But at the moment, it's about building confidence and really, showcasing that the imposter syndrome a lot of women have, that they, I don't know, their idea, which is more worth millions of dollars. Yeah, it's just an idea. Like, I just had it. It's not important. It's super, super hard to combat. And it's really important to do it step by step and not just rush into it. And it's also, topics that usually don't talk about in mixed companionship, for example, parental leave, like how do you do flexible working if you have children? Are women with children welcome as well? Is it like, what's the parental leave policy, for example, at companies? How to make sure that we, you know, read through the fine print and our future contracts. So at the moment, I want to focus on that. So everybody of various skill levels is welcome. And I'm thinking of doing English meetups, maybe via Discord, because that's something that I'd like to be part of. And I think could be really advantageous to share perspectives of different women and different, you know, people working in game dev, like even once per month, and meet up each other. Yeah.
Awesome. I think once again, it's a great reminder for everyone in this meeting, especially if you're just getting into the industry. Or like you're thinking of getting into the industry, to put yourself out there and especially seek the events that welcome and encourage you to grow and network with others. Like, for example, the coffee meetups that Johanna talked about. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there because absolutely the industry needs so much workforce, especially in the upcoming years. We need the game designers, the programmers, the whatever else the industry desires, and you might be the super amazing right fit for the industry in the future. So yes, please don't be discouraged or intimidated, and do try to go to events, because I think it's an excellent opportunity to network. But on topic of that, to do that, of course, what Joanna just mentioned about imposter syndrome. Sarah, Malin, and Joanna Luisa, have you ever felt like you had imposter syndrome? Have you ever had experiences with it? Has it ever stopped you from doing something you really wanted to do, but then you were too intimidated to do it?
Yeah, I can talk about just my game project 2 with Futuregames. I was the only PM, and earlier we had like been a lot of more PMs in the groups, and I had 15 developers, and I cried a lot because I didn't believe in myself to actually like push the whole group to do like wonders. But then I got courage from my PM classmates, and they helped me to grow actually, and I grow with the team as well, because people are not blind. They can see that you are hiding something. And it's really good to share it with the group that, okay, I don't feel comfortable right now with just what you are talking about. Can you just like brief me through it? And they happily do that. It's just you that make up your mind that you are not able to do that. So it's very important to remember that. Yep.
Yeah, I agree with Malin. Our first game project, we were thrown in after 6 weeks of education, but in a good way. It like forced us to get out of our little comfort box, even though like imposter syndrome came with that. I am working for a game studio while doing my internship, and I have 100% imposter syndrome while I'm here. But like, if I fake it, I make it. They won't know that I don't know. No, but yeah, if I make them believe that I know, I will know.
Actually, how do you do it? Do you have like a pro tip of how to fake it when you have imposter syndrome?
I don't know. I don't have. I just think I just forget it. I know it's easy to say, and like, yeah, I also want to cry sometimes, but then I just have a cry, and then it's good, and then I try again. Like, I'm here as a student. I'm not here as someone who knows everything. I'm not. Yeah, I'm a student. I'm learning, so I might make mistakes on the way to learn, but that's okay.
Yeah, I have the same, like, this is my 4th year in game design education. And when I started out as a project manager, I had a full-blown freak out that I was the one responsible for the projects. As a producer, I think it's very, very easy to have imposter syndrome, because you kind of can't get away with as much as like some dudes can. Like, I've seen project be just insane. Like, you know, you feel like, oh my god, I need to be perfect in everything. but then you kind of realize like, oh, but I don't have to be perfect, because like it isn't dependent on me that the game is going to succeed or not. The PM is not solely responsible for the project, it's the team as well. The PM can only do so much for the game. But as a game designer, yeah, I have it every day. Like I go from because I'm not an idea person. Like I'm not a person who gets the idea and it's like, oh, I solved the entire first stage of the game production. I am the problem solver. Like you kind of have to understand where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are. And imposter syndrome has helped me coming to terms with that, what my weaknesses are and what strengths are. But also it drives me to always improve and change and to know myself. And I think it is a curse sometimes, but it's also quite a benefit, because some people definitely do not have that. And you always become the better game developer by having that. Like you should not have it to the point of it breaking you down, but you should also have like a little bit of, okay, maybe I don't know everything, and maybe maybe I'm not perfect in this yet, because it has it's also why I'm here. Like I went into a second education because I thought that I could learn so much more about game development, and I have. Like I've practiced and honed my skill as much as I possibly can, and it's really satisfying to see yourself improve from what it has and what it hasn't been. So it's just like, it's not bad to have it, but just remember that you are probably, like, if you get into video games, you are a good developer. Like you have some kind of quality that is incredibly impressive to have. It's very hard to get into this education, so you're good in some shape or form.
That's so interesting to hear, because I've heard a lot of students especially might experience imposter syndrome, but I'm actually curious for those who work in the industry as well. Like Joanna, you have had 2 years of experience, I remember you mentioned, but also, of course, the baggage of experience that came with that even earlier. How has your imposter syndrome experience been? Do you ever experience it, or are you immune to it now?
Yes, I experienced it, but I actually, I'm a person that, as I said, I'm coming back to the version of myself that I always was, and I rush into things, not thinking much. So I actually think it was good that I didn't do much research, because I would have been much more frightened. And at 11-bit Studios, the guys gave me so much support. I actually had I think one of the first conversations I had in my first month was with the marketing lead, who said that I'm in the correct position. I'm here, my skills are valued. This is really important that I do it my style, and I don't have to copy anyone else. If they wanted to have some, anybody else, they would have hired that person. And I think that was super important for me, not to feel it anymore, and to really engage, with people in the industry, and just learn as much as possible from others. Like, to me, the industry is so different from any other industry, because there's people from so many walks of life that don't have to have formal education, for example, because they are great at storytelling. They programmed in their free time. They started from a different path altogether, like, the ladies who mentioned from restaurant industries. I think that's quite popular in game dev altogether, that people just switch their life around for their passion. And for me, it was very eye-opening, and it helped a lot with imposter syndrome, because I was like, okay, I can do marketing. Social media is completely new, because I did it as a hobby, and I'm learning as I go. And I think the guys at 11-bit, and because that was my first role, I think it set up me for success, really. And I've been able to make a career super quickly in game dev. Like, I'm a marketing lead now. It wouldn't be possible in corporations. I think I would have to be 50 or 60 to even think about, senior management level, because the roles are very limited. They're quite, cemented in the sense that there are people who are always in corporations, and it's not always about merit that you bring to the table. It's more about loyalty and office politics, which is very different in independent game dev. Like, you have to bring, numbers, money, investors, anything else, performance on Steam. And it's super good for all people who want to be responsible from day one. And for me, it's been very freeing. Like I can be my true version of myself now. I don't have to worry, oh, is my manager going to be upset with me because I'm better at the role that he is? Is it bad that I'm saying hi to the CEO because they taught me that at business school, but apparently it's not the correct way to do it, and so many other things that really impacted my career at corporate. And as I said, I was burnt out severely because I kept asking myself, what is wrong with me? Then, like, you know, my contracts were for a year, for half a year, and you know, I was finding myself, but at the same time it was very damaging long term. And here I am in the sector for 2 years. This is the longest I've ever been in a sector in one place, and I gained so much experience in the roles that I think it was like 10 years of experience in 10 months, for example, for me, which now I'm super happy, I'm super content, and I can be a much better manager nowadays than the managers I had. And I think that's one of the very big pluses of game dev, that people get responsibility very early. And if you perform well, you are rewarded like quite handsomely. And you can just focus on what brings you joy. I think that's the most important thing at the end of the day. We make games, we make super awesome things. And yeah, it's super rewarding. So I think group support helps with imposter syndrome. And that's why I think women should support women. But for me, male mentors were super important as well. Like I was one of the 2 women in marketing department when I started in game dev, but I never felt as if I was not part of the group, because the managers made sure that I was included. I was part of the, you know, after hours drinks. They introduced me to people. They got me, you know, to the after hours meetings as well. And I never felt that it was a problem. Although I had some situations that were not at all, you know, in corporates and very sexist in nature. And that was very surprising to me that, oh, okay, this is so progressive on one hand. On the other hand, this is the sort of thing I would not expect at all in this sort of environment. So I would have, you know, comments that, yeah, for a woman, how would I build a stand, for example, for an event? Like, what would I do? Like how helpful I would be as a woman. And, you know, I joked that I would make sandwiches, and they said they didn't need sandwiches. And I was like, okay, so that's really bad. And another one I think was when I was doing an event, and my manager joked that we can park in a space for pregnant women because I'm on board, and otherwise they could not, because there were no because there were no other women than me. And I said it out loud, that's wow, okay, wonderful to have that sort of feedback. So, you know, the coffees and meetups are definitely for women, just to know that we're not alone whenever we hear something like that. No, it still happens. It's still very bad. And that's why you have to have support network that you can, you know, laugh about it. You can tell it as jokes. When it happened, I was not laughing at all. Nowadays, I could just be, yeah, like another party story. And so many other good things come in game dev. But it's just good to have perspective as well, that, you know, it's not always sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes it's bad, but I think the pros definitely outweigh the back. I'm much more relaxed. I have work-life balance finally as well, which was not possible in corporate. So yeah, definitely recommend game dev.
You touched upon so many things during this discussion, but also one that stuck out to me was also, of course, all the organizations and all the opportunities that are actually by females to females in the industry, or like by women to women. And what you mentioned earlier in this webinar, both you and Sarah, was women in games. Sarah, would you like to tell me a bit more about what Women in Games is? What's its mission? And what are you doing as an ambassador?
I am very new to this. I entered this year, so I haven't been able to do much work for them specifically. But essentially, we're hosting events and having events for women to gather and talk. And we have a webinar soon for ambassadors only, for example, where we just talk to each other. We support other women who aren't an ambassador. We essentially just try to gather women in the industry and to have them connect, support each other, mentorship, and so on. So we feel less alone, and we can talk to each other about things that we might not be able to talk to other developers. And I mean, it's not only for women, it's non-binary as well, I'm pretty sure. It's just a very good organization to feel less alone and to get support and help. And also, like, I work mainly with currently I work mainly with encouraging, like now, encouraging women to get into the industry. But as well, at my school, I work with supporting women at my school to, if they have any issues. Like, I am a very staunch, if you need anything from me, talk to me um, person. Like, I'm very well connected within the school itself, like the location at least. So I have contact with the school about everything, and I make sure that the school is still keeping up to standards and so on. I mean, we don't really have any issues per se, but if there's anything like I can bring in, like more gender equality or whatever notes here and there, I definitely try to do my best to do so.
Absolutely. And I think it is a great reminder that when we talk about spaces for women, of course, they're also very welcoming to non-binary people and trans women as well, of course. But Joanna, since you've been in women in games a bit longer, perhaps you could share your perspective on what it has been like to be an ambassador.
Sure. So I joined last April, actually during Digital Dragons, which I was attending for the first time ever. I joined at the invitation of Women in Games because I was responsible for charity streams and sending keys to games for streamers. I think it was one of the charity streams that we did with Women in Games that they decided to invite me, and I've been a part of panels on equality, on the glass ceiling, for example, how it impacts women in upper and middle management roles. So it's very much how Sarah said, it's about supporting and bringing in an audience and a place for us to discuss topics that otherwise sometimes get omitted, or they are too complicated to discuss at a very large venue, or it would be, too personal to do it. We had very cozy ones just for ambassadors. We've had ones open to the public. There are usually two big conferences. I think this one was in spring and another one in autumn, which is an expo with Women in Games. The organization has been on the market for around 8 years, I believe. It's based out of the UK. So there are a lot of sponsors from the UK. For example, if you want to learn about companies in particular, there are ambassadors in each country. I think it's around 1,000 ambassadors altogether now. We have around 20 or 30 in Poland on its own. I'm trying to revive the network a bit because there are some new ambassadors that joined on my invitation, which I'm really happy about. And ambassadors in Germany, UK, Asia has its own chapter because there are ambassadors all over, different countries, China, I think, Malaysia, Korea, Japan as well. US is quite big. They have a different organization, Women in Games International, which is of its own. But men are very welcome actually in the UK organization. So Women in Games, it's the acronym is WIG. GJ, yes. It's quite complicated when you look out on the social media profiles, but you'll be able to find them on Twitter, on Instagram, I believe. They started, I think, TikTok accounts some time ago as well. And all together, ambassadors are super welcome from various disciplines. It's about, being able to talk to other people, present yourself as a woman or a non-binary person or as a trans woman or a man. Men are more than welcome. There are some men ambassadors as well. If they are, allies of women, they want to promote more women, especially in terms of employment, of mentorship. And it's a space for us to be together and, not remember that we are always there for each other, especially when we have questions. There's a massive Discord that's open to ambassadors and the public if you want to join conversation. It's also present on Facebook. I've been ambassador, talking on panels, talking at webinars. And the whole coffee idea was because people were approaching me about being ambassador and what it means. And some women are too scared to be ambassadors because it is a public facing role. You're included on a list for each country and your company is, matched there. I have to update my profile to be honest, but it's a super welcoming space, and I'm super happy about it because it made me more courageous, I think, especially about talking about your problems, about your hardships, and asking for help. Like before that, it was super hard for me to ask for help. But the stories I heard, about parental leave, for example, about how women deal with management burnouts and, just leading teams, that was super helpful, and that was not possible outside of the organization. So I truly recommend it. And if you'd like to learn more, I'm happy to talk about it on LinkedIn or, after the webinar as well.
Absolutely. And I think it's awesome when women encourage women to try new things or like step it up or, ask for the promotion and not be a bit intimidated by the coworkers or the bosses, and just do awesome things. I'm very curious for Sarah, Johan, Louisa, and Malin. So far, you've been in education for around 1 year for this education, whatever, following. I'm curious, what would you consider your biggest achievement, or maybe what are you most proud of so far? Let's do a bit of flexing.
I would be proudest, or my biggest achievement would be our game project 1, mostly because it's still an amazing game that I'm still very proud of, because I thought I was going to look back at it and be like, oh, that was the beginning of the education we didn't know. But I actually still think it's really, really good. And I'm also so proud that we had only been there for 6 weeks, and we managed together to make something this incredible. Yeah.
What type of game did you work on?
For the first game project, we did a physics-based precision platformer called Fall of Ralph. When you're a little angel orb and you're going to make your way up from heaven, you're going to make your way down to hell to see what Hades has to offer. So it is inspired from the game Getting Over It, where you're supposed to traverse upwards, but we flipped the gravity. So like you're going to travel down to hell. And if you lose your grip, you move on upwards.
I actually remember the time when you worked on this project, and I was like checking over what was happening and overlooking the progress. Once again, honestly, it was amazing that you managed to pull it off. And well, first of all, once again, 6 weeks into the education where everyone is still fresh new out of the oven, not really knowing what to do or where to look. And it was a fantastic experience. Your team has been absolutely amazing, and everyone was so receptive to feedback and receptive to learning, especially. Mm-hmm. Also, I remember once you released the game on itch, it has been like, it blew up on itch.
Yes, we have, I think in 2 months, we got about 500 views and like 200 browser plays maybe. And we managed to get to the top 8 on the new and popular page on itch.io. So that was amazing, without any like kind of marketing, just for having a good game.
That is honestly incredible. And once again, it's been so little time for you in the education, but also the project. How long was the project?
4 weeks.
In 4 weeks' time, managed to make something so incredible. I'm honestly so impressed with it. What about others? Is there something particular you would want to bring up that you feel very proud of? Or
yeah, I also want to say the game project 1 and 2 actually. To actually be able to do that a second time and alone, and you have more skills on your bones, and it was really fun. But game project 1 is like a holy thing, I actually is with my current team 1 doing the Xbox game camp in Sweden, and we are creating a game, and everybody have different roles now, and it's so fun to actually, everybody liked each other so much that they want to like create a new game. And our mission is not to just like do the game camp. We are going to do a game that we want to pitch and sell the idea, and so for me it's the biggest achievement to actually get so good friends.
Actually, could you tell me a bit more about the Xbox game camp?
Yeah, it's like a game jam where you need to like apply for the spot, and it's Microsoft and Xbox that hosting this event. So it's a 3 months project where we get mentors from like Mojang, Machine Games, different kinds of mentors to help us out to do a good game. We also have like this webinars, we have inspiration lectures, we have so many good people are involved with making our games. So it's very fun to do this, actually.
That sounds awesome. Could you tell a bit more about what type of game you're working on, if it's not a super secret indie game?
No, it's not super secret. We are actually just brainstorming phase right now, but we are going to do a horror game. It's a 3D with the crafting abilities, and it's going to be underwater. So yeah, it's a work in progress, and I will let you know when we are going to release it.
That sounds super fun.
Yeah.
Please add those blobfishes in it.
Yeah.
They're just so cute.
Yeah.
Sarah, do you have something you would want to bring up? Something you're very proud of?
I have. I for like 2021, I designed a 3D platforming-ish, very weird surrealistic game with one of my teams, and it's really one of my success stories because we won an award for it at the Gotland Game Conference, and we got nominated twice for the SGA award for Game of the Year and Art Direction.
What is SGA?
It's a Swedish Game Awards. So it's hosted in Sweden every spring, but at the time, since it was Corona, we had it during autumn. And I was in Portsmouth currently, so I had to fly back from UK to Stockholm to just attend that award, and it was so much fun. It was one of the best times in my game dev careers to do that. Yeah, it was so much fun. It was one of the best times.
That is fantastic. From a teacher's perspective, I love seeing all the creativity and all the crazy stuff students put into their projects. And once again, when you see a project just starting off as a simple block out in Unity, just, nothing is there yet, there's just an idea floating around in the air. And then after a few weeks' time, it sort of becomes to shape into something beautiful, something very nice. And at the end, when the final game is released in very, very short amounts of time, actually, compared to the actual production that happens within the games industry, which can take from, I don't know, a month to 10 years. And when students get to deliver something so polished, so complete, so amazing, and so creative in such a short amount of time, it's always incredibly inspiring. And I love seeing all the creativity that goes into projects like these. From those puzzle platformers or reversed gravity, getting over it style games. There's so much to offer from all the students, and in my mind, game projects are one of the most fun things to do during the education, because you get to sit down with a team, you get to do it with others, and you get to make friends, which is also always awesome. And also, of course, you get to get some awesome things on your portfolio, which are incredibly important for getting your foot into the door of the industry. Joanna, what has been your proudest achievement within the industry, or what are you most proud of?
I think two things, to be honest. Gamescom last year, because I did a booth for both business and entertainment, which was really, really tough, and I did it alone because that was my solo project. I had to talk to the vendors, try to find all the connectors, get everything working. And it was my first time doing an exhibition like that. Usually before, we partnered with, for example, Indie Games Foundation Poland to represent us at overseas international trade shows. So that was huge for me, and it was super important as well. It was my first Gamescom as well. I never attended Gamescom because when I joined, it was only online version back in 2021. And second of all, I think the coffees at the end of the day, because I didn't expect so many women to connect, and I've actually started some really nice friendships out of it, and I think it was very needed, and I'm super happy that I persevered and stuck to it, that I'm going to do it. I'm going to start organizing this, and this week we're going to have an online and offline coffee chat actually in Warsaw. So I'm really looking forward to it. And I think these are the two things that I'm really proud of. Yeah.
Congratulations. I've been
Thank you.
scrolling the chat and there's a lot of questions in there. So perhaps we can take some questions right now. Let me just find, there were so many. One really interesting question that stuck to me by Teresa R. What do you think about games that are marketed / targeted to girls and women? Do you hope to encourage more women to create games for women to play, for women that they actually want to play?
I would say right now, games that are marketed towards girls, if we look at the percentage of girls that are in game development, I would assume that there hasn't been a lot of girls in the process of that particular game that is marketed towards girls. So I'm unsure about it, because like I would love for games to be marketed towards girls, but then I would actually want it to be made by girls because they know like what we want. So yeah.
I want to. Oh,
no, fine, you can go.
I want to interject. Is like, that is one of the biggest issues. Like that there aren't. I mean, in less or in roles that are like ordinary developer, there are women, but in the higher ones, the ones that decide, like creative directors, CEOs, there aren't enough women that are like seeing the potential. I know that we have a studio in Stockholm called Star Stable that has 50-50 women, at least, I think is one of the few studios, and they make a girl specific, I guess, game, a horse game. And it's successful, and it's like but people don't seem like even people don't seem to be interested in working there. I mean, it's not a lot of women are interested in that, but when I talk to the guys, they're like, oh no, I want to work with like the cool stuff like Payday, and it's like, but you have to understand that it's glorious to be a part of this little amazing game where you can just inspire girls to, because I have actually the predecessor, that was the first game I played, so they have a predecessor game to Star Stable, and that game was the first game I ever played with a female protagonist, except like Sims, but that's a simulator more like, and that inspired me to continue playing games because I was super in love with this horse game, and it was the first game that I got to play with a female character, and it's so, you don't understand like the empowerment that lies within games that are for women. But I also strongly believe like women are like, there's been a lot of talk that women aren't interested in games like there are certain, like such as Call of Duty and League of Legends, but I mean it's clear that we are interested in those. But I would love to see more like cozy games, for example, is very much marketing towards women, and I love them so much. Like they're one of my favorite games, like Subnautica, Sandmaster. Like it's just so nice to see that we're getting there, kind of, that the market is going away from just having like, oh, Call of Duty, and going more towards like, oh, people love just having cozy little games and pretty graphics, and like it doesn't have to be like, game design is no longer just aimed towards this is how game design is and can only be, and more towards it can be anything you want. And because of that, we have so much more diversity and so much better games when we get like women on board on that stuff, you know.
That's absolutely right. And I once again love the idea, like if you're passionate about something, like for example, playing specific games, you know, why not go and make the specific game and join the industry and, you know, bring more games for people like you to play and enjoy. I've seen a lot of great questions in the chat regarding sort of like how to branch out in the industry, what direction to take. For example, a question from Maya here. I'm really good at creating lore and world building. Which way should I take to make it to games industry? And there were other questions about programming and if I remember, like narrative design, technical things. So Sarah, since you are a design student, could you maybe walk us a bit through perhaps the branching sections of game design? What can you do if you study game design? What does it mean to be a game designer?
It's the best thing ever. I find it so much fun because it can be very technical. So you can work with more programming aspects, such as the engine, and that's a technical designer. So you don't necessarily need to be a programmer to be able to do some kind of like more in-engine technical work if you don't want to do full-on programming. There's a narrative design, which is more game writing. Well, it kind of is like combined depending on what studio you go to. So there's narrative design, which is more the story and how it's presented in the game. There's system design, which I'm more specializing in, which is more how, or gameplay as well. That's more of like, how is the actual gameplay supposed to work, and how is the system mechanics in the game supposed to work with each other. I'm a generalist, so I do a little bit of everything. There's also level design, where you design the actual levels and which the players traverses in. There's probably more like sound design as well. Like there's a lot of different kinds of levels of technicality you can go into, and just, you don't have to be solely like, oh, working in engine. You can be a narrative and go more towards just being creative. Like there's so many options for you to go where there's game design essentially.
What about quest design? Since we got a question about that in the chat.
That I think is more narrative, if I'm not incorrect. You're the head teacher. But it's a kind of mix between gameplay, I would assume, and the narrative. It's I would say the quest falls under narrative because you design the game according to like the story, I suppose. But yeah, I don't have a lot of experience with quest design, but that's more I like a narrative, but I'm not that much of a narrative designer.
Some other questions from the chat that I saw. Are Futuregames courses full-time? Yes, they are. They're especially full-time during the game projects where it's very intense. But it's, once again, it's so much fun. One really good question I read right now from Sophia is regarding portfolios. Do you have any tips on how to get into the industry, or how to make your portfolio look attractive?
So I can talk a bit maybe from marketing perspective, because I hire people from community managers and marketing projects managers. So basically for me, a good portfolio is one that showcases your best work and gives us a good summary of you as a person that's going to work with us. So it's really good to have it concise, like use your only your best pieces. Like I would suggest, for example, if you have an artistic work, in case of community managers, for example, it was copy, like posts on Twitter, or great photos they could take. It was up to 5-6 pieces that you were super proud of and could really tell more about. It's also about, you know, showcasing the skills that that are matching the job description. So do not use the space to kind of waffle about everything you want to do, but just focus on what would be, you know, a good indicator for the hiring manager that you're the one. It's always good, I think, in case of portfolio, checking that it works everywhere. So it's a PDF or a PowerPoint, but you're sure that the link is correct, that the bit.ly, for example, URL shortener works everywhere. If you use a Google Drive, that you allow everybody else to see the link and files you have on there. And yeah, I think my advice, for example, for CVs and resumes, because they're still used, like these are like the bread and butter of hiring people, it should be truthful. So for example, level of language you speak, it should be according to the European Union. So like, you know, the levels A, B, C, etc., or native levels, all the software you can actually use, and you're able to do, for example, a piece of artwork or a writing assignment, and not just assume you can, but it'd be good to practice. For narrative designers, because some of my friends work like that, it's good to have a piece of writing that you can showcase easily, but it should not be super lengthy. So like 1-pager, 2-pager maximum. It's all about brevity, because big organizations have HR departments, but indie studios usually have only the owner and a hiring manager who directly hire people. So the easier you make a decision for us to hire you, the easier it gets. Like, there are not super many, you know, well-developed studios that have massive HR, hiring specialists, in the sense that there are not 5 people looking at your CV. It's probably 1 person. So if it's super clear and it's easy to access, that's all there is to it. And being prepared for the interview as well, researching the company you're applying to, playing our games, knowing what, for example, genre we do, what type of category we're in. Are we indie? Are we AA? Are we AAAs? That's super important, because a lot of people don't do that research, and you immediately are in a bad position if you can't say anything about the company. Nobody expects you to be, super prepared and know inside secrets or anything, but just, check out the Steam page, check out itch.io, check out the official website. I think that's definitely the advice I would give.
Absolutely. And to add on to that, I think also looking at, of course, the job description, but also looking at portfolios that people produce within that role in the industry. Of course, people who are already working in the industry for a few years will have a bit more updated portfolios, but perhaps you can look at, let's say I'm interested in CD PROJEKT RED. What does a portfolio of a person who just joined CD PROJEKT RED looks like? You can take inspiration from it. You can perhaps like, okay, this was, let's say, an environmental artist portfolio. So they produce a lot of environmental pieces. What platforms do they publish their portfolios on? So for example, for artists, perhaps it's ArtStation. For game designers, perhaps they have their own website. Perhaps for programmers, it's a bit more like fun clickety on the website, or really just going and nailing down the technical work that they have done. So I think it depends. And what I really like about the Future Games education is that, first of all, of course, we have the internship as part of the education. So as a part of the education, you already get to work at a studio and have something awesome to showcase on your portfolio. But also we do prepare you from almost the very beginning to get your foot into the door, to know what's the mentality behind entering the games industry, what are they looking for in a portfolio, etc., etc. All right. So a question for me, as I'm still in middle school, what about the application to study game art? How does it look like? Do you have to prepare specific portfolio, as an example, with concept design of characters? So once again, for all the educations, if you're interested in something, go check out our website, because we usually have descriptions of what we want to see. And there's different criteria on how we grade specific education. So for example, for game art, we're going to look at your visualization ability, what type of work you have produced so far. Someone is unmuted. Okay. One second.
Muted now.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, but for other educations, it can be different as well. So for example, for game design, we're looking at industry relevance and, in the process of how you make games, how you approach making games, how you think when creating a level. Do you start with, a white box, block out where there's nothing there and you work out from there? What is your mindset and perspective? And for programmers, we're going to look more into the technical aspect of it. Do you know how to code? Do you know how to make a box go from left side of the screen to right side of the screen? So all these things, of course, are different for each education. And I think it's really important to look at what specifics we're going to be looking into when accepting students for a specific position. I'm also going to say, if you're interested in a specific education, and that goes for Future Games and everywhere else, once again, as mentioned earlier, apply. What's the worst thing that can happen? you're gonna get in, like, or you know, maybe you can try again next year if it doesn't go right. But at least you would have learned from it. And once again, don't be scared to apply. Please do apply. We want to have you on board. I think it's gonna be so much fun. All right. My question to everyone here is, what would be your advice for someone interested in joining the industry? Let's say I haven't studied game design yet, or any specific field, environment, art, or whatever it may be. What would you recommend to them?
I think going for a game jam, if they do want to produce games and be part of the development process, there are lots of stationary game jams and
What is a
online
game jam?
jams. So basically, a game jam is a very awesome event that gets people together to make games in groups or solo. So you can find, for example, your team from scratch, really build it from scratch. For example, you can do programming, somebody else can do art, somebody else can do sound, and another person does narrative design. There are game jams where you are solo developer, so you do everything. But so many of them are open to everyone. They are happening, globally. There's a global game jam, which is an organization that does announce jams all over the world. I think the last one was in February or March. I can't remember now properly, but quite not so long ago. But there are local ones in Poland. I think there are at least 6 or 7 throughout the year. And people get together, they meet up in person, or they meet up online via Discord and work together. So it's really a good experience for you to build your portfolio, especially if you're able to finish the project. Try yourself as well. Are you able to end the project, to do it? How do you work in a team? Is it something for you? Also, there are roles like mine which help promote the games that are already in the making, and I'm not part of the development. I'm the back office, so to speak. So there are lots of roles where you can build your career around being a community manager, which is something that I am in desperate need of, to be honest. There are not enough community managers, and ones especially, female community managers are so super welcome, because that perspective of being able to directly contact players, get their feedback, it's super important to build a community that people want to come back to the game, play it, and buy new games, especially for a publisher, that you get the audience for the label of the publisher, and having somebody engaged for is super important. And going to events, a career, job trades, I think open days at universities as well that offer game development curriculum, that's super important. You can meet students who are already there, or attending these webinars like the one that we're doing now. I think that's already a step forwards and towards knowing more about games, and reaching out on LinkedIn to people who are already in the industry. I think most of us are super open to helping out and sharing our journey so far, and you just got to make the first step and send a quick note to someone that you think could be a good fit for a role you'd like to do, and just go for it. I think game dev is super supportive in that sense. It's so different from corporate. In corporate, you would not be able to do the things that we do here. So try and reach out and talk to people, and definitely not be afraid to ask for help or any guidance. I think we all want to have more people in the industry, especially more women, but also non-binary people, trans people, people who can bring a different perspective and make games reflect life better. So it's not only about one type of protagonist, one type of gameplay, because games are art. We should do more fun and artsy things, and the more people we have, the merrier.
Sarah, what would be your tip for someone interested in the games industry?
I'd say try creating games first, because I've noticed that some people are in love with the idea of games in general, they love games, but game development is not really as much it's fun. I love that, but some people don't find it fun to actually create games because it's a very a long process. You can't just start an amazing game from scratch out of nowhere. So try playing around with Unity and Unreal and the game engines, and if maybe video games per se isn't your thing, maybe try board games and different kinds of games. just generally just try it out with like game jams, for example. It's really good advice because then you can see the progress really quickly, and you will have people around you that probably know a little bit more, so you can, you know, learn from them. You will learn what kind of what you like if you like art or design or programming or producing, like audio, like there's so many parts of game development that you can just snap up during game jams and just get a hold of it. But yeah, also like contacts, as Joanna said, like just getting to contact people and ask them and check out like GDC talks and everything. Like just try to get like in the space to see if it's what you want, and if you find something that's super passionate. If you don't find it like at the time, like maybe you don't feel like, oh yeah, it's totally everything I want to do, because then you're kind of set to, you know, start getting into the industry. But yeah, if you are kind of uncertain, then like really try to dig deep into the industry, because it's a very accessible field. You can create games alone. You don't need like you have Unreal, it's free. So it's definitely like just play with it, try it out, be creative and a little bit crazy, you know.
What about Marvin and Johanna Louisa? What is your advice?
I would
You can go first, Molly.
okay, so I would say that I agree with Sara and Joanna about everything, but I should have been looking up on YouTube about making games and see if there is something for me. But don't be afraid to actually apply, because sometimes you get scared by just like knowing that, oh my god, is this for me? Is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? You will find it out, I promise you, and you will have fun, and you will sometimes cry if you're not like feeling that you have done the right decision, but you will have a good school to come to. So I really like believe in yourself and don't be afraid of failure, because it's a good education either way, and you can use it in so many aspects as well. UX designers can like create the websites. You can do stuff if you don't want to like cooperate with people. So there are many ways, and don't be afraid.
Yeah, I was gonna go on the same track. Don't be afraid to be like the first female, you know, you're paving the way for other females to come behind you. Even if you are alone at the start, others will come because you paved the way. So be brave and be that brave one and pave the way for others who aren't as brave.
So well said. All right, everyone, thank you so much for this wonderful discussion. It's been super, super interesting to hear your perspectives, and I loved everything you brought into this webinar tonight. I learned so much about your experiences as well, which is amazing to hear. Firstly, perhaps of your successes, and of course, a bit about your struggles, but overall, I'm glad to hear that the industry has changed much from what it has been 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago, actually. And seeing that there's more and more opportunities for inclusivity within the industry, and many more opportunities for women to join and be themselves, make games that they want to play, make games for, you know, themselves, and also, of course, for others. It's been wonderful to hear your experience, both the Futuregames and all the cool things that you have been doing on the side. And I'm very, very happy to have had you today during this webinar. So Sarah, Malin, and Johanna Louisa, thank you so much for joining. Seriously, you've been amazing. And I love talking to you about the games industry and about your experiences.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. Also, I was really thrilled to hear all of your stories, you know, and we covered a lot. And thank you for sharing your works and links. I think it's really informative also for our audience. I think, Julia, we will now take a break, 10 minutes, to take a tea or coffee, and we will get to the second part of the webinar. if you're okay with this, in 10 minutes. So
Yes.
it will be precisely 44 past 6 when we meet again. So guys, take some tea, take some water, and we will get back to the conversation with Agnieszka Szamałek-Michalak from CD PROJEKT RED, and Joanna will lead this conversation. I hope you, Johanna, Sarah, and Malin will stay with us also to share and interact and hear opinions from AAA studio representative who is dealing with these issues of, you know, diversity and inclusivity on daily basis. So yeah, let's take a break. Thanks.
All right, everyone, we'll see you in 10 minutes.
sound right, boy.
I'm sorry, guys. I see that my mail factor don't work too well. Sorry for scaring you to death with this film. So now let's continue in a quiet mode to our Julia will take over admitting. Thank you very much. So now we have a very special guest, Agnieszka Szamałek-Michalak, who is Culture, Diversity and Inclusion Director. I almost learned it by heart. Just take
nice to meet you.
Repetitions. Thank you for joining us today. I think our goal is basically to know your perspective as a person working on these issues which we discussed before for AAA Studio. How do you address it basically in everyday work? But I will pass the stage to Joanna right now, who will interview you. So I'm getting into background, just trying to respond to some comments on the chat. So please, to the audience, please feel free to send us questions. I will try to respond continuously.
Thanks for invitation and welcome everyone.
Yes, welcome, Agnieszka.
Very
Okay,
much
super
welcome.
nice. Yeah, super nice to have you. I actually was looking so much forward to interviewing you because I think I first learned about you during Digital Dragons panel on women actually last year, which
Yeah.
I was in the audience. So wonderful to meet you finally. So yes, I think we can start maybe with an introduction. I know you've worked in the industry for a very long time now, and it'd be amazing to learn how you got into it and what's your perspective so far, especially now that you're responsible for diversity, inclusion. Do you see changes in the industry? What was your role as well in the position you have today? If you'd like to share with us all.
Sure. So yes, I'm kind of I'm calling myself a dinosaur in the company in CD PROJEKT RED because I've been here over. Actually, this is my 11th year, and when I say this loud, I feel really like strange, particularly because I love changes and I get bored very quickly. So when you combine those two facts, it doesn't seem very logic. But in CDPR, someone asked, how is it hard for me? It's not hard, but because I love dynamic environment, I love changes. So my adventure with CD PROJEKT started more than 10 years ago, and I joined when it was a company of 130 people, and there were probably around 7 women in entire company back then. Mainly, I mean, not mainly, probably most, of course, in back office teams, and just a few, I would say, probably 3 or 4 girls in dev teams. I started to work in HR team. So I was relocating, I was recruiting, I was relocating because back then we started to recruit people from different parts of the world. And then I was, my path was actually like, I would say connected to life cycle of employees. So I was helping managers, supporting managers and employees in their day-to-day life, in like their career paths, in their growth. sometimes in situation like conflict situation or some kind of difficult situation, but also I was responsible for all kind of internal events, which were supposed, like the aim of those were like integrating teams and just having fun. So all of this was the beginnings. I enjoyed it a lot, and I have much sentiment for this time. It was pure fun, and slowly, with a growing number of people, employees, we started to grow as an HR team, because I started when it was 2, and now it's around 40 probably.
Wow.
So yeah, so it's big. But then I started to take care of internal communication, and organically, I would say, and by default, because I always was interested in women's rights. Since my very, like, I would say, first high school, not high school, but the beginning, the primary school, I was very much involved in discussion about equity, empowerment of women, etc. So I was very vocal, I was very active, I was debating a lot. So like it became very natural that I became the person in CD Projekt who is speaking loud, who's talking about women, about LGBTQ+, about minorities in our company. So, like, I would say naturally, it became, I became a go-to person, right? If there is something to talk about, discuss, think of something or a project, then it will be me. And now I'm, here I am. So 2 years ago, I came up with the idea of project together with my team, Dziewczyny w grze, which is like girls joining the game. And I'm very proud. Basically, you were answering what you're proud of. So I was thinking that it would be my answer, that I'm super proud of, that we are organizing this. Now it's already 2nd edition of this initiative together with Foundation Perspektywy Women in Tech. So this is my beginning. And you asked how it changed, right, during this time.
Do you see like changes when you started? Because I think it's so wonderful that you have like 10 years under your belt, because it's so seldom to find a woman who's been in the industry for so long and she didn't change and like didn't have the story of, yeah, we're here for 5 years, went outside of the industry and came back because she couldn't find, for example, something the same. So it'd be super wonderful to hear, like, how do you think it changed with you being in the industry throughout the the 10 years? What do you see different now?
It changed really a lot, I would say, and positive, in a positive way, definitely. So as I already mentioned, we had a few women on board, and now of course the ratio is still it's not equal, right? It's not 50-50. We have 30% of women in entire company and 22% of women in dev teams. So there is still a lot to do, to grow, to challenge, but it's already, we've been progressing in terms of this gender diversity. So it's a good sign for me. Also, we started to talk about this. I can't remember really when I joined. I don't remember. For me, it was like, the company is full of guys, and it's normal because it's game dev industry, and games are made by guys, so it's normal. Nobody was actually thinking or having an open discussion about this. We just treated this naturally. There are no candidates, so how will you take even, how can you employ women if you don't have candidates from high school or from universities, women. So I would say that starting from awareness, that we started to be aware that it's not okay, right? Like, we look at the world universe, it's very diverse. We look at the society, we have 50-50, and then you look at your team and why it's not reflected.
It's just one woman on the team.
So we started from awareness to discussion to actually actively and proactively looking for solutions. And I was talking to recruitment team, and I was asking like, hey, so what's the problem? Like, our we don't have talented candidates, or they are failing, you know, at the recruitment stage. And the answer was like, we are not having actually even enough candidates applying for the job, right? So we started to look at the numbers, and I started to talk to Perspektywy, and they showed that on the universities, on the typical, let's say, typical courses or lectures, you know, direction that's are leading to game dev, like, you know, tech or something else. There are not enough, there are really few women, right? So it's very rare, it's very men's world. So that's why we started with the, we came up with the idea of Dziewczyny Grze, because we thought like, okay, so we need to start earlier. We need to, you know, find or reach girls when they are in the middle of their education path, and they are right about thinking of their career in the future. So that's why we decided to do this very like mission goal project, and which is aimed to high school students.
Yeah, I just wanted to add as well some context for international people listening. Fundacja Perspektywy has just had the 15th anniversary, correct me if I'm wrong, of the Dziewczyny na Politechniki. So girls as engineers, I believe. That's the way they translated. So it's been a very huge topic in Poland for a number of years, that there are a number of women in engineering, computer science, and as you mentioned, all the design studies, there are not enough of them. And for example, I was one of the students, I think I learned about it when I was deciding as well, like, oh, should I go for something scientific, or should I go for like humanities, etc. And I went for accounting and finance in my case, but it was always in the background that there is this activity. And I was really impressed actually with Dziewczyny w Grze, because I was at 11-bit studios back then when it started. And I was like, yes, okay, it's happening, like game development program is starting. And if you could share, obviously, as much as you're able to, what was the response? Because I noticed, obviously, social media was the usual, just women's program, blah, 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 all this, you know, talking that I think Perspektywy had to fight against when they started their own program. And anytime any woman empowerment scheme, even, you know, my coffee's got so much backlash that why are they only women focused? Why are they only women admitted? Why do women need spaces for their own? What was the response, you know, of your gamer base, of all the fans of CD Projekt, and how did you deal with it actually? And you know, in the second edition as well, I think like it proved successful. Correct me if I'm wrong, that you decided to go forward with it. So as much as you're able to share, like what was the response?
So I said at the beginning that we believe that this is kind of mission for us, right? That it's not you know, it's obviously also employer branding project. We can say that we want to build, you know, an image of a company that cares really. But when we are not looking like into the numbers, like how many girls will actually start working in CD Projekt, because when they are finishing the project, they are still usually under 18 or just, you know, starting their studies. So for us, it was like a kind of mission, yes, that we need to fill the gap, right? The gap of those women who are going to universities or colleges, you know, to get the education that will help them lead to game dev. So this was the first answer. And we didn't actually think what will be the response of community, let's say, right? And well, the reactions were different, as you could see, and we know that anything that we do connected to diversity, inclusion, and equity, it always provokes a lot of hot discussion, you know, a lot of comments, which are also negative. But this only, to be very honest, this only makes me even more convinced that I want to do this. And it was always for me like this, that the more I hear, you know, negative or full of hate, you know, comments, it's like kind of fuel for me. You know, I'm not reading. I'm not going into, you know, I'm not spending 2 hours on reading comments. Of course, I'm aware of it, and I try to also, you know, balance to give the merit arguments, you know, but the more important for me is to do it, right? I believe in, so I believe the company is believing, the board is believing, and is, you know, investing those money in the project, which is important. So we didn't think whether we would be more popular or less popular, or more gamers will join or less. We believe it's right to do so. We want to continue, and this is the most important. And I believe that with the, you know, years coming by, just people will be convinced by facts, by reading, you know, what those girls say, by looking at the videos that we share, the testimonials they give. They are amazing, you know, and that's why it's worth doing, you know. And internally, I must say that mostly it was very positive, but we had a few people who started, you know, to discuss, and we spent quite a lot of time discussing, like, is it good or is it bad, you know, and why we're deciding. So I believe in, you know, discussion, but like a merit discussion. Yes.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, I'm super happy to hear that, because I think, you know, the worst thing anybody can do is kind of give up just because there's criticism. And I'm super happy that I think you were the ones that picked up the mantle, you know, but because you're a big enough organization not to have to care about, you know, somebody boycotting the sales, somebody just being like, oh, I hate you, blah, 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 blah. So it was really good. I think it sent the signal as well to other companies that we got to step up, we got to start doing things. And I talked to Perspectiva as well, actually, at some points. And I have the coffees as well in Warsaw. And in Wood One, I think it was being mentioned that, you know, like the foundation itself was not aware that there was such a market and such, you know, just group of girls that should be addressed, and that game dev is a different territory for them altogether. So that's really good that they got partnered, you know, with you as like a big guy, like, you know, strong enough to be able to handle all the community on the commons. And you know, talking about diversity, I read about the menstrual leave as well, which is one of the huge topics, obviously. And I think it's super, you know, inspiring to see game dev stepping into that conversation at all in Poland, because it's such a unique topic. And I know GOG, like your daughter company, first implemented that, and they were super proud of results. So do you see yourselves as kind of trailblazers in Poland that, you know, other game dev companies should look up to you, or do you concentrate more on the US, on Sweden, for example, in implementing these practices and, you know, things that help a lot in employee welfare and are part of the diversity? Because I think if people are looking for a place of work that would accommodate them, they're more, you know, more prone to applying, and there's more talent that you can just integrate into the company. So what do you see as CD Projekt, like your role in this? Like, do you think you'll open the discussion to that?
Yeah. So it would be obviously great if other would follow, if other would inspire. And I'm hoping that it can be like this. But with Dziewczyny, I was also hoping that we will be the first, but then it will be like explosion of kind of similar initiatives. So it hasn't started or done yet. So I don't know. Here I'm thinking of building as a company. We want to build this common understanding and common, let's say, image of a company who cares also about women, right? And if we want to say that game dev is for women, when you were saying, right, or Julia was saying that there are 50% of gamers women, and why not bringing those women to industries, so we could say like, yeah, this is the parity, you know, we together will work on something great, on games we want to play. And for me, this is the signal that we want to give to the world, actually, that, hey, we care. And I think that thanks to the menstrual leave, we really maybe not already achieved this, because maybe it's too early to say, but I already had, you know, a few interviews, like job interviews, and there were people saying like, oh, you know, by the way, I was reading that you you implemented menstrual leave, and for me it means that you care and you're really like pro women, right? And for me this is exactly the goal I wanted to achieve, apart from obviously giving the extra benefits to all menstruating people in the company.
Yeah. And when you mentioned, like in the company there were like voices against, was it just men, or was it actually split that, some women were against the program, or was it just, majorly men not understanding why it should be implemented?
So with Dziewczyny w Grze, it was mainly men, right? So there are a few men that shared with me their perspective of having that this kind of program is discriminating boys, right? So this was their main fear, I would say, or perspective. With menstrual leave, I must say that there were not a single one who said, actually it was, I would say, a few women who shared their maybe not fears, but kind of stress that maybe it would be perceived bad by guys. But what was super nice and positive, that actually there was not a single negative comment from guys, and actually it was the opposite. So I was absolutely, empowered.
That's really good.
Yeah.
That's really good. Actually, I'm surprised, because I would have assumed, that the conversation I read about, the menstrual leave in the community spaces was that men should have the beer Monday, a day off, or like additional.
I don't know. Yeah. So it was funny. I met a day after, I met a colleague. He's a lead in dev team, and he said, "Oh my God, I was reading the comments for 2 hours, and my head was just exploding." And I felt like, good, I'm even more convinced it was a good decision that we are doing this. So, kudos. So for me, it was like, this is the most rewarding, right? If I hear a guy saying that this is actually the good direction. Yeah.
I have a question, actually, if I may. So, I mean, CD PROJEKT RED is a huge company. I'm just curious, when you spoke about the culture of the company and how people react to things like menstrual leave, how do you cultivate a culture, a welcoming and nice culture that is inclusive for everyone in such a big space with so many people?
Well, this is a very broad topic, and we could talk a lot, but I would say that we really put attention to creating a very open and safe, healthy work environment, right? So it's you can from starting, like you can express yourself the way you like. So the dress code, there is nothing like a dress code, right? You can wear whatever you want here, right? We have what is the English word? Pronounce, like she, her,
pronouns,
he, pronounce, right? So we implemented pronounce for those who want. Obviously, it's not obligatory. If you want, you can add to your email or on Slack, or other channels. You can leave it as well. We started to train also my colleague from my team. She's doing the simple language, an inclusive language communication, like training. So we are giving, the tips how to handle this, how to be more inclusive, not to write, hey guys, or not to write he, she, but to be more like more inclusive to I'm thinking what else. We have toilets which are gender neutral, right? So there are many, from tiny to bigger things, that we are implementing in terms of benefits as well, etc. That you feel here that we build this psychological safety as well. We give also a possibility to go to a psychologist if you need. Also, it's paid by company, and obviously it's completely confidential, so we don't have any information like who is taking the benefit of it. But there is a lot of from bigger to from smaller to bigger things that I think build this feeling of safety and healthy work environment. I don't know if it answers your question, Julia.
Oh, absolutely it does. It really seems like you guys lead by example when it
Thanks.
comes to industry standards. So it's really awesome to hear.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I've got a question actually about men as well. Like, do you think they should be part of, promoting women and sort of, getting, how do you feel about getting them on board really? Because in my case, for example, I really, really felt welcomed by the guys, like especially the guys, because there were no other women in my position. And the only other specialist that joined, she was on the same level as me. So we could only, be colleagues, but in the sense of having leads, welcome women, like say that they are needed, like also fight for their voice in the room. Like, how is it in CD PROJEKT? Have you ever had situations when actually you had to step in, as well as HR, for example, they're like, yeah, let the women speak, guys. It's just not only you. And just because they speak, for example, quieter or are more introverted, it doesn't mean that their feedback should be foregone. Like, have you had such situations?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely. It's only, I mean, only if looking at the numbers, it's I would say that, meetings where the dev team, or not only dev team, we have participants, it's mainly men, right? Or unless it's HR team, which is mainly women, right? But it's also dev team. But what I want, okay, so answering from the beginning, we are not against men and we are not fighting with guys, and we don't treat them as our enemies. Actually, it's the opposite. I treat them absolutely as our allies, and we need them, and I encourage them to support our initiatives. And I love to work with guys, and it's a wonderful place here. It doesn't matter if it's like more guys or not. For the moment, I believe in diversity, and I believe that it brings, creativity and more innovation, and this mix of different backgrounds and perspectives. So I'm into it, but at the same time, I'm saying that we are not against anyone, right? So with Dziewczyny w Grze, we have mentors, and like mentors female and mentors male, and I love to work with them, and they are super passionate about what they do. They are extremely involved, engaged. They were the best students, I would say. I mean, like, in the class. So they really add value. We were expecting from mentors to spend to meet twice a month with their mentees, and soon after we found out that actually they are meeting every week, and sometimes even every day. They hear each other, and they feedback each other, etc. So definitely it's very rewarding. It's great to see, and empowering to see guys who are understanding, sharing the same values, helping. And I heard a very smart sentence that now there is too much of mentorship from to women, right? Either guys or women, and there is not enough of sponsorship. But meaning, like, what is the sponsorship? It's like meaning powerful guys giving the space, right, to women, like giving the wind into their wings so they could fly, right? So so this is something that I want to also, I discussed it with my my boss, right? My boss is CEO, the president of the company, and I'm also discussing it with him, right? That you can help me by this. And I'm also sharing my feedback that after a meeting when for example, I said something and there were seven guys, and I shared an idea and nobody responded to this. I don't know, was it like a bad idea, or nobody heard me, etc. So obviously we're living in a real world. It's happening. It's not perfect yet. Yeah. But there is a lot of, I would say, work on our side as well. You were talking about the imposter syndrome. Of course,
I wanted to ask you about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is something that the data shows that like a lot of people are dealing with imposter syndrome, but somehow women have this tendency to have more. And if you ask me if I deal with imposter syndrome, of course I do. And every day, you know, I can find a little tiny example of how I doubt in myself. And even, you know, being invited here, I was thinking like, you know, who wants to listen what I want to say? You know, is there anything really interesting? So, you know, this is like something that we all deal with. I think that there are obviously also cultural background, right? I think that probably if we have some kind of research, it will show us what is the difference between like Western, you know, countries, or Eastern Europe, or even Scandinavia, you know, which is like far more advanced. So there is so much work to be done in terms of education, raising. You know, I'm a mother of 2 kids and a daughter, 14 years old. You know, and I'm trying to be a role model for her as well, and try to raise her in a bit different, you know, mode that I was raised, even though I had great parents, but still, you know, there is everything around you, you know, that shows you some patterns, some stereotypes. So there is a lot of work, and also a lot of work to be done by ourselves, to give ourselves the right to speak up, you know, to fight for more, to want to, you know, to be ambitious, not to be, you know, not afraid, what's the word, embarrassed, you know, that I want to be, I don't know, CEO and to tell this loud, right? Or I want to be a member of the board. Why not? You know, why not? So yeah,
I love
there
this.
is a lot
I
to
love
be done.
this. Yes. One of the questions I have probably is, you know, like, have you had like a male or female role model in your journey at CD Projekt? Like, was it someone that you looked up to, or someone that you kind of, you know, wanted to have the career? As you said, like, for example, be part of the board, or be the CEO. Have you been able to find someone like that? Because for me,
Yeah.
personally, it's been a bit hard, because so many people have had the journey from QA into marketing, into other roles. And I'm an outsider. Actually, I was told at one of the events that I'm an outsider altogether, that like I came out of nowhere and I'm now here. How is that possible? And that was part of my imposter syndrome for the past few months. Like, actually, does everybody think that way, or is it just that person? So have you been able to model your journey so far, or have you, you know, been inventing along the way?
Yeah, so I must say that I can't spot one person that would be my probably my mentor, right? So I would say that there are probably a lot of from teachers. You know, I had a wonderful teacher, and she was a young, you know, Polish teacher, and she was very modern in the way, like the way she was dressing, it was very different. So back then, you know, at school, you know, teachers were very like I don't know how
prim and proper,
reserved, you know, right? Yeah, and she was wearing a leather, you know, trousers, and she was sitting on the desk, you know, and she had the red hair, and we were reading poetry loud, you know, and we were discussing and giving our opinions, and it was so fantastic, you know. Then I met amazing friends at my high school, you know, and they were very like which I'm still in touch with them, and they are very powerful, strong women who were always very courage to share their opinions. So this I listened to Madonna, you know, and despite maybe you know, I'm not maybe so fond of what she's doing right now, but back then for me she was like, yeah, you know, she's doing what she really wants, you know, she doesn't care about what people think of her, that she's really going her very individual path, and she's doing what other guys are doing, but just because she's a woman, it's like, she's, you know,
she's treated differently, right?
So for me, looking at her, for me it was like cool, you know, she has this kind of freedom and this rebel, you know, and so I would say that there are a few, or even more than a few women, my mom, you know, that were really important for me in my path, that had an influence.
Awesome. And have you ever been part of any organizations, or would you like to join any of the organizations? Or do you think that, for example, for you being at the director level, it's not needed anymore because you're established, you have the position, you have the power as well to influence things? Or do you think it doesn't change, like no matter the level that you're at?
It doesn't change at all, or even I would say the need is even bigger, because there is even this expression of being a lonely leader, so the ladder you step, the more
lonely
isolated
gets,
you become or lonely you became, right? So I'm so answering your questions. As far as I remember, I'm not a member of any association or organization, but actually for a few already years I've been thinking about becoming ambassador of women in games. So it's cool that you are here. You can share with me your experience and a few other, because I heard
we'd love to have you.
So,
like I was so surprised you are not yet, to be honest.
Me too,
and
to be honest. I was probably too busy to think of, but I would definitely
it'll be immediate, because I think you've done so many great things, and like having even like I saw you at Digital Dragons, and like having those opportunity from Futuregames, I was like, oh, I know Agnieszka. I saw her on stage, and that was already, wow, I wanted to be more involved because that panel inspired me as well. So yeah, I think like that'd be a super short procedure, to be honest.
Awesome.
Because everybody's welcome, and you've done so much already. Okay. Do you think that, for example, for women, the meeting other people, I think girls from the Futuregames already mentioned that, but how has it been for you over the years? Like, were you able to meet people through the disciplines, or just within the HR, sort of bubble? Because for me at the start, it was the bubble of marketing, but then I reached out to designers, I reached out to other people because my role required that. I was responsible for social media at 11 Studios. So a lot of times I had to, propose like different things to showcase on social media. And that was natural, to visit people at different floors of the office and talk to them. But how was it for you? How were you just part of HR? Were you able to, have different
being HR?
being
HR, like a good HR, require building relationships with everyone in the company. And since I was recruiting, then it means that I was going, I was recruiting for programmers and artists and designers, but also lawyers, etc. So I was, I was going to the recruitment processes with my friends, leads, directors, etc. So I had to really know what they are doing. And for me, it's crucial to understand what job they do, like what's their passion about, but also what exactly they are doing. And I remember that for me, actually, gameplay designer, it was kind of hard to get what the hell they are doing. And I spent really hours and hours talking with my friends from the gameplay team, so they could show me, explain to me what is the like this mechanic, what is AI, like how do they design it, and why it's fascinating. My brother, he used to work in CD Projekt as a writer, and he was writing, script for The Witcher, and now he's still working in the industry. So again, it was great to discuss with him like how you write the story, the dialogues and the paths of choices, etc. So I never was in a bubble. I never was in a bubble because, and still, if I'm, responsible for internal communication and the culture of the company, I really need to understand where the heart beats, what makes people want to be here, want to, why they like to spend time with each other, what's important, and what are their concerns as well, what are their problems. So I must say that I'm still, very often getting the some questions or ideas, even though I'm not, responsible for this anymore, because I'm not in a HR team anymore. But still, people, think like, oh, there is a question, I will go to Agnieszka, she will help me. So yeah, definitely not the bubble.
That's so good, because I'm asking because so many women shared with me actually that, for example, if they're a programmer, they're just within the programming sort of, sphere. They don't know many people from the company at large because they're so focused on the work and they focus on it and not able to pick up networking. And,
Yeah.
with the coffees, it was really mind blowing to me because it felt so natural in game dev that you go to beers, you go to events together, you spend time, you party together, and it just goes naturally that you meet so many people around yourself. So how did you get into CD Projekt at all? Like, were you gamer, for example, or did
Actually,
you?
Actually, I wasn't back then, and it was, the story is not really fascinating. But my brother started his career here, and I met with him. I was just about, giving birth to my, not maybe just right about, because it was like year later, right? So I had a kid, and I was thinking about going back to work, and I didn't want to go back to my previous company. And my brother said, like, hey, do you know if our cousin is looking for a job, because the HR team is looking for, for someone? And I said, hey, I'm looking for, a job opportunity. And he said, oh, I didn't know. So maybe you can send CV. So I sent CV, and the truth is that my first attempt, I failed. I was said goodbye. I mean, someone better was chosen. And then soon after, I saw another job offer, and I replied directly to the manager, and I said, like, listen, I know you are looking, because the job description was like for a very young talent who is just starting, career. So I said, like, hey, I know it's your probably profile of your candidate, it's different, but I really believe I will suit the job, and I really want to embark on this on this ship until it's still in the dock, and I'm so grateful, for being given the chance, but also I'm grateful to myself that I didn't give up, that I didn't say, hey, they decided on the first try that I'm not a good fit, so, well, I will just give up. No, I really felt like, okay, I will write something personal, and I wrote to directly, as I said, to a hiring manager, and I said, look, really, I'm worth trying, and then it was very quick. So I had one interview, and I had a call in the evening, hey, did you see our offer? So yeah, it was back then. It was great.
That's really good. But I think I really appreciate you sharing as well that you didn't get on first try. I myself applied a few times when I was still in corporate. I think I applied to Techland. I think I applied at CD Projekt as well at some point, but I didn't have the skills yet. I was still a marketer, and only after I did social media for fun for the Ugly Betty series, I gained the skills that were needed in game dev. So I think it's really important for people to understand as well that it's super important not to give up. That just because you get a no now, it doesn't mean you won't get a yes down later. The line. So really good. But do you play games nowadays? Are you more into games because of your daughter or because of the work, or are you still more on the outskirts of games?
I would say that I have a huge respect, for games, and I watch how my kids are playing. I watch my husband playing, and I watch everyone doing the games. And when I started, I must say that I feel like I'm privileged. I use this word, and I really believe that I feel privileged to work with so passionate people who create art. And I believe that games are part of art, and I don't have maybe that much time as I wish to, digest and go into, but definitely I'm closer than I used to be. Yeah.
Awesome. And actually, one of the things I think that stuck to me when you were talking, and with the changes at company as well, do you see a lot of, generational change as well? Like, with the Z generation, with the millennials, do you see recruitment, for example, that the industry has changed over the 11 years that you've been with CD Projekt?
Yes, I would say that I can see, even though that we have a very young team, right? We like the average team is 30 or 31. So, but we already get matured over the time, over those 10 years. when I joined, I was like one of the few parents. Now I can see that, you know, the roles of our employees are changing, and we have more and more parents. So we actually recently we've made a research like on the parents' needs, and we're implementing some solution. We also created a network, like parents network in Red, and it's a completely new like space for us to take care of, right? We started 2 years ago organizing summer camps for kids, and people are bringing kids to work, and you know, we have company that is taking care for 1 week. They are like taken to amazing places and they have great time together. This like in 2 weeks, we are organizing also a family and friend day when you can bring your close, you know, friends or relatives to the company, and we'll be doing some kind of attractions and just to bond together. So I would say that yes, it's changing because we are getting, you know, older as a, I would say, as a team, as a community. So it changes from you know, parties that we used to, you know, spend until the very morning time, to like, hey, maybe we will for the summer picnic we could invite kids. And for me it's like, oh my god, really, this is something has changed, you know. And we're thinking like how to, you know, mix like those two worlds, right? Kids and adults, and having fun all together, etc. So it's changed, right? Yeah.
But I think that summarizes our talk really well, to be honest, because I think it'd be good to ask for questions as well from the audience. But I think, yeah, as I mentioned and you just explained, I think the image of who works in games and who plays games changed so much over the last 10, 15 years, because now it's not only like people like single guys in their 30s sitting in a basement. There's actually like moms and dads, people with grandchildren, even like people with disabilities that do accessibility for games. And yeah, it's so changed from the stereotype that used to be super prevalent. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing all this. I think the conversation could go on hours, to be honest, and I appreciate you sharing as well, you know, the less known things. Madonna as a role model, I think, yeah, it resonates with me. I listen a lot to Material Girl, to be honest. It helped me to get into the mood for like earning money and doing the grind. So let's see what questions we've got. I'm curious about whether game studios hire translators as they outsource the task to specific translation offices. Is there any opportunity for philology students to join game dev studios as well?
We have a localization team, so yes, we are definitely hiring people of their philology, usually English, but not only. We have a few other as well, as Italian, I think, and Russian as well. But also, of course, we work with companies that specializes in localization, right? So it's not mainly, we are not doing this on our own. We have rather coordinators who are working with specific companies doing the localization, and people from here, they have the knowledge how to, you know, run the project.
Yeah, and to add to that from my perspective as well, for example, community things, Steam page descriptions, they usually are outsourced because it's repetitive tasks that, for example, the companies are better suited to work with instead of hiring someone specially for that. So, for example, QLock has localization in terms of like Warsaw teams. Lionbridge, I believe, there are a few that are super specialized, and I think they'd be super happy to have new employees on board. Oh yeah, but yes. Feel free to ask as well, unmute yourselves or directly ask in the chat. One of the ones, I think it was a comment, dream to work for CD PROJEKT RED, but I have empty CV, so this is only a dream. I think as you said,
you need to start you need to start with a dream. If you don't dare to dream, then nothing will happen. So just start with dreams, and then it will come eventually.
Yes, and I think as we talked as well, that just because you don't have something now, it doesn't mean you won't get the you know, the portfolio going. I think we shared some tips in the first half as well, how to do better portfolio and CV. But I think I can speak for myself, but probably Agnieszka, you will agree that it's good to reach out to people as well directly, read descriptions of jobs, for example, what is expected, what materials are needed, and just try and send the CV, send the application, because you never know whether you will get a no or yes, and the worst you can get is a no. How do mentorships work at Future Games? Will there be mentorship programs? I think Piotr or Julia, I think that's the question directly to you. If you'd like to share.
It in writing. I think we are basically based on mentoring, and I really believe in this way of passing knowledge. You should have somebody you can trust and you have personal connection with. So this is what's happening in Future Games. If the class is, let's say, 30 people, so our teacher, like Julia, being head of education in game design, is your mentor, and she's guiding you through the process, and you get very personal contact with her. And of course, Julia doesn't know everything about game design, so we incorporate tutors, working on daily basis in industry, and they become your lecturers. They come for particular workshops, or they take responsibility for some part of education. But Julia is there always on site to guide you through the process. So if we are talking mentoring, this is the mentoring, and 30 weeks of our education, the last 30 weeks of course, is internship in companies like CD PROJEKT RED or other companies which we already built a relationship with. So this is a time and place to find another mentor in this company for you. But I encourage you to use this time with Agnieszka to ask her questions related to her job. We are always here for you, whether it's on email or on Facebook. You can ask any questions to Future Games. I would suggest asking questions to Agnieszka now.
Yeah, I have sort of like a question based on some of the comments I saw in the chat. For all the people who are interested in entering the AAA industry or CD PROJEKT RED, do you have some advice on how to steer yourself perhaps to be more ready for the industry, or especially ready for the AAA industry?
I don't know if I'm able to answer this question like particularly. I would say that first of all, you need really to be open-minded, to follow what is going on in the industry, to play the games. If you want to do AAA games, you need to play AAA games. So to know, like to have this experience, what it's about, right? It's good to read industry news, right? It's, as you said earlier, it's good to attend industry meetings, gatherings, events, take part in game jams, etc. So this is actually, I don't know what else. We have plenty of amazing, talented people. Like you met with Miles, you've met probably, I don't know, you met or you will met with Sasko, Paweł Sasko, or Sebastian Kalemba, or Gosia Mitrenga, and much more. So it will be great if you just follow, people who you admire, who can be a role model for you, and who are sharing actually the experience. Maybe it's good to look for a kind of mentorship, right? Like to find the opportunity to get in touch with those experts, with those who are actually making the games, who are practitioners. I don't know, it's an English word, sorry, but who are, making the games, working in the game industry, and maybe it's possible. So they would have a few sessions, to work with you as the mentors and mentees. So I think there is really lots of things to do. There is so much of tutorials on YouTube, where you can learn. It's so much different than when it was 10 years ago. It was so much fewer opportunities for such development growth, and so I would start with those.
Absolutely. I really like what you mentioned, like being proactive in the industry, because I feel like just showing your face at the events, like not even, being super active, but just showing up and doing your part, like maybe even awkwardly sitting in the corner. People are going to start recognizing you, and it is going to be so much easier, because even though games industry, it's sort of perceived as like, or, what it's used to be thought as, you sit in the basement, you do your thing, you don't talk to anyone, you don't know any people, but it's such a social industry. And to make a game, you need so many disciplines, especially if we're talking, AA, AAA. conversations and networking is such a humongous part of it. So people really should not be missing out. And
yeah, and the greatest example for this is actually Miles Toast, who was here last week, and he was a student when he went for Gamescom, I think, and he came to our booth, and he said that he would like to work for us. And I remember that we came back and we said like, hey, we are not, employing for internship, we are not employing people from outside Poland, right? But he was so persistent. He was in touch with us. He was showing his work, that we make an exception for him, and we say, okay, let's invite him. And he was invited for, I remember, I think 6 months. And then he went back to Germany and he finished study. And then he came back and he's still here, and he became really a super, super talented, important for us person. So yeah, as you were saying, the best is to be vocal, to talk, to get connections, to be in touch with people from the industry.
Yeah, and I think one of the questions actually ties into your reply already about the internships and opportunities for Polish game dev students. I know about your program, like the Red Summer internship, correct?
Yeah.
And it's been going for 2 years now, but I think if people want to apply, it's for next year now, right? It's the 2024 edition, and you're gonna probably start recruiting in spring next year, correct?
Yeah.
Or autumn.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So how has and how has that been actually? Because it's been such a pain point, I think, to reply to so many junior people that okay, you need to have some skills because the projects require skill sets, and it's much easier to hire a senior as well, especially for indie games, to hire someone specialized already. And do you know of any other opportunities, or like are you growing the internship program for CD Projekt? Like how does that work, as much as you're able to share, obviously?
For now we are not expanding, so it's similar to last year, and we are hoping to have more opportunities. But for now, we are also, we need to look also at the capacity of our people who are, finishing the game or starting a new game, because the worst thing is to hire an intern who will have no opportunity to learn, right? Because there will be too many busy people around intern. So definitely we need to match those two, like capacity of our people with interns willing to join, right? So it changes, it varies also the area. I think last year, I can't remember if there was audio team looking for intern, but for sure this year they were looking, and I heard good news. So we are looking as well from my team. We're looking for intern, and last year we didn't. So it changes from year to year, and I think there will be, you just need to be in touch, follow our social media and try.
And I think it's really important to underline that you should be, following the social media. That's where job posts are. Skillshot is a great website for Polish game dev as well. Facebook groups, a lot of people in the industry are actually on Facebook in Polish game dev, which is a bit different to like Western companies. But Twitter as well, I think it's a good source for job adverts, and just being able to see the posts as well, following, and just keeping in touch as well with the website, probably in your case, like the career section. One other question, maybe. How much time do we have left, Piotr? Just to be aware and mindful as well, how many questions we have yet to answer, and we should let Agnieszka as well have a breather.
If Agnieszka is okay with it, we could continue for 15 minutes, and then we should wrap it up. I think we covered a lot today, so.
Sounds okay with me. Are you okay with that, Agnieszka, as well?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I think this one is very interesting and very on point, to be honest. As an insider with a lot of experience, what do you think about the trend of fully remote positions in gaming companies? Do you think it's good direction, or are fully on-site jobs better for the company life and its workers? I'm super curious on your opinion.
It's a tricky, I would say, and I'm personally very much sociable person. So for example, I love to work with people Offline, yes. So in our company, we have those two work models that you can choose. So it can be either home office or it can be office first mode, with also possibility to have like hybrid one. But what we can see after 1 year, we introduced this options a year ago, and we are looking that there is like a very tiny and slow tendency of having more and more people in, again in the office, like back in our studios. And somehow we believe that in the creative industry, having this, possibility, this the opportunity to be together, to brainstorm, to exchange our opinions, discuss, etc., is really beneficial. But at the same time, I think of, for example, introverts who really love the opportunity to stay at home if they especially have, the right conditions, comfortable conditions for that, because for them it's like less stressful, or there's less noise, or there's less distractors, right? So we try to balance this, and we know that there are certain positions, like for example, when you are an asset artist, that it doesn't require too much of cooperation between teams, right? You have something that you are concentrating all day long doing, this asset for the game, and it doesn't really require from you to be all the time, surrounded by other people. But it's not only about doing your job specifically. It's about having this team spirit, this feeling, I call it like belonging, right? That we are identifying with something like red, right? Like what is red? Like what is the red spirit? What is the red mindset? And we believe that really there is something like red identity, and it's very hard to shape this and to build this belonging, culture when everyone is dispersed, So we are trying our best to create as much opportunities to team bonding, to being together. So we had, last year we had 20th anniversary party when everybody really, after some people were meeting after 2 years of not seeing each other because they were working because of the pandemic, but then because of choosing this path of working remotely. So some people were looking at like, oh my God, you are still, working here. And what we noticed is that in terms of communication, you very often just jump on some people who are sitting in the canteen or having conversation by the coffee machine, and you just, you meet just those 3 or 2 people, and suddenly you solve the problem. You would have to set a call and go to one person and to another, and probably you wouldn't meet them at the same time. So if you ask me about my personal choices, I would go into like, oh, let's have everyone, back in the office, and let's have, this time together. But I know the reality is a bit, more complex, right? And I think that there are people who are really benefiting from not wasting time to, for example, to commute to work, right? Or they can spend more time with their relatives, with their kids, with their partners. So there are always, the bright sides and dark sides of those two options, right? But as we can see, the what is the direction right now in the industry, it seems like more and more companies are deciding, like creative industries are bringing people back, right?
Yes. And I wonder, how it's gonna influence as well the diversity actually in the industry, because I think, it's a good comment here actually to the discussion. Dagmara posted, I'm on a wheelchair, and for me better if staff is remotely. And I think during the pandemic, a lot of people who otherwise would not be part of GameDev applied, with small children, for example, or those with disabilities. So I think you are one of the only companies who did full remote, I think, in GameDev in Poland, at least. I think Techland was another one. 11 studios
probably.
had hybrid. When I was working, it was 2 days remote, 3 days in the office, something like this. And marketing team was urged to be on site because they wanted to have the team spirit. For me, I really enjoyed it personally because I was studying in the industry. I really found it useful. But for example, now I work for remote, which was really scary for me, super scary. I thought, what am I gonna do with myself all day? But I just came back from a Paris team gets together, and like for example, I see why people would use remote now. I think it opens like opportunities. For example, I work for a UK company now, but from Warsaw.
Exactly.
So I think it opens the possibility.
The world
for example,
has shrinked, right?
Yes, exactly. For you to have talent from the US, for example, despite a time difference, and for people from the same time zone to work and not have to move, which is beneficial. But I think each company has to kind of see the pros and cons. And I think marketing is super hard to do full remote. We are doing it now. I'm a lead of 2 people, and meeting them in person was super useful, so that I understand, okay, the jokes they were making, they were actually jokes. They didn't mean anything other. So I think if companies do full remote, they should have the get-togethers, like you mentioned, that people do meet at some point, even after the 2 years, even after like half a year. But they do know that what's on Slack is the same in reality.
Exactly.
Because a lot of people, I think, when they decide for full remote, they don't think through how not knowing someone face to face and knowing their reactions will influence the work. That you can just have the worst arguments over Slack or Discord, never meeting anyone face to face, and saying things that you would regret saying face to face, or the other person would, but you just do it because the anonymity of being on the internet works the same sometimes on Slack.
There is a lot of interesting data and researches, and I think it will be more and more. I recently read a research from States, obviously, because they are like, the most super active in terms of psychological researches, and they proven that that the research showed that, for example, programmers who work only remotely, never work together, they tend to have to share less feedback about their code rather than when they sit together. And also it was interesting to see that especially women who work only remotely, they are even less open about writing, feedback to code, right? So, there are pros and cons, and it's very difficult. Actually, maybe it's also depending on the project status, what like phase, right? Either it is like the pre-production, right? The conceptual phase, or if it's the right production or the post-production, etc. It has so much dependencies, and there is no simple answer for that. And there are always people here who love to work remotely, and they absolutely can imagine different way right now. And there are people like myself who can't I enjoyed for some time, working remotely, but believe me, with 2 kids, a husband and a dog, I really was dreaming of going back to office.
To the office, yes. And so, I think, when people, I think, talk like everybody would like to work remotely, I think they should have back in the mind that everybody has different circumstances, and we should, be tolerable that, just because it works for me, it doesn't work for the other person.
Exactly.
And that's always good to have in mind. I think we get to make one more question, I think, with 8 minutes to spare. So I think this one is another interesting one. Nika wrote, I've been a web developer for more than 5 years, but I really got bored there, and now I'm thinking about entering game dev. But I'm concerned, wouldn't it be too late for me to switch directions in my 30s? Piotr answered here really quickly, and Nika added here that it's just in my country, it's actually pretty hard to find a job as a switcher if you're plus 30. Is the situation different in Europe and Nordics? So what do you think of this? I think there are so many people who entered game dev only in their 30s. They had a different career altogether to that moment. I'm an example as well. I was in corporate. I was not part of game dev really quickly after university. I never thought I would be. And ladies from Futuregames as well. They talked about being first in the food industry, restaurant industry.
So I have maybe really a lot of example of people who changed their career path being after or around 30. I have a colleague from QA team who used to work as a HR lead or something like this in like airlines, you know, one of the airlines, and he was responsible for building like a full, you know, offices and staff base, etc. And he changed, you know, and now he is QA lead after 1 year. He joined last year or 2 years ago. I remember a guy who's now working in different company, but I loved his story, Alex, who was a French guy, being a lawyer, who came here for a Q&A tester position. And he said that his wife, she thinks he's you know, crazy, but it was such a big dream for him to start to work in game dev. So he had like, you know, really very stable situation. He was working as a lawyer for a big companies, you know, and corporation, and he was working remotely already. Like 10 years ago, he was working remotely, and he said, no, but I want to, you know, put everything on one, you know, card, and I want to start. And he became a quest designer, you know, and he is still a quest designer, doing like being very successful in game dev. So they're really there is another girl who also, she was a lawyer, and she started to work here in kind of administration team, and she switched to dev, and now she's doing the, I think she's in the lab, you know, like doing some kind of researches. So it's possible. It's probably not very easy, I would say, right? I wouldn't promise, like I wouldn't do the fake promises that, oh, come on, you know, it's just piece of cake. Probably not, and require really a lot of you know, what's the word, perseverance, perseverance, you know, and you need to be really confident, and not to give up on the first, you know, difficulties, right?
Yeah, and I think that's really good to keep that in mind. And Piotr shared as well that he was 43 actually when he joined. So
I was 35 when I joined.
Yes, exactly. So I think it's never too late to switch, especially if it's like a lifelong dream. I think it's the worst feeling when you give up the dream and you never try, because you can try, for example, being a tester, you know, even for a few hours. Some roles are part-time, some roles are internships. And I think game jams are definitely a really great opportunity to try how you do it. And for my role, for example, marketing, being a community manager on a Discord, like that's already job experience. You can see how you interact with people. If you do, for example, write stories for your fandom, write, you know, short stories, you can see how you would fit into a team. Is it actually something you would like to do as a job though, or is it a passion? Because a lot of people come into games. I think one of the ladies mentioned it before, that just because you like games, you may not enjoy making them. Like it's very different. It's sort of, I think there's a saying in Polish, I don't think it's translatable fully, but when you know how, you know, if you like a meat worker, you know how sausage is made, you may not want to eat it again. And sometimes, you know, you just enjoy it as part of your fun and hobby, and it may not be suited as a work, because some people just want to play games.
It's like, you know, sometimes you can we have people who are saying like, I regret, you know, I was doing the game because I would love actually to play it, right? And when you know what's inside, you know, then, you know, it's not such fun. But I was thinking one more about like how to, you know, switch to this career path, that maybe it's also a good idea to maybe try to get into industry, like let's say game dev, but even start to work in the, you know, in marketing or in administration or HR, or I don't know, something else. And then, you know, we have a plenty of such histories where people started to work in a different, like, let's say, back office supporting teams, and they switched, they moved after, you know, because you get to know people, you start to talk like, hey, you know, so maybe there will be some opportunities, hey, so maybe I will jump in. And really, it's happening a lot. So this is also kind of like, how do you just put your foot in the door, you know, and the door will open.
Yes, exactly. And I think it's always, you know, worthwhile to keep that in mind. And I am, for example, thinking of narrative design in the future, maybe level design. And it's only after talking to people, understanding their jobs as well, and seeing that you could do that and see that it's enjoyable. And I think that's great advice. And I think we've got 2 minutes to spare. So any last questions, anything else? I think
Actually, I want to use this opportunity to ask a question, because I would feel bad being, only administrative here in administrative function and being remembered for scaring people with a loud noise.
It was a good trailer though. It was a bit scary.
I'm also a representative of minority here. So in the audience, I think there were 3 guys at least, clearly from the nicknames. So my question would be, and you can really answer very shortly, what us guys could do to make this, things change. And because I realize, listening to the kind of, conversations like today, there is a lot of things that I don't have on my radar, right? There are subtle things somewhere related to context, to our cultural structures, etc., which we are raised in such a way. So, for example, being so proactive on the meetings, it's structured. I thought it's a good way to communicate, and it's always nice to have sparring. And I would never perceive that I can intimidate somebody, but actually I learned living in Norway for a few years. I can be intimidating, but never before. So what could we do in short, guys? Let's say about this process.
We have only 1 minute. That's really very short to answer this, but it varies from like you are, I don't know, maybe you have family, so it's from like, okay, it doesn't matter if you have family, but for me it's like guys being fathers. They have a lot to do to show that to girls, that for example, if they play, they usually ask, their sons to play. Even my husband, he plays the racing games, and it was natural for him to ask my son to play the game, but and my daughter, even she didn't think of joining them. And it was him who said like, hey, but actually, why don't you join us and don't you play and show to your female friends that you can, have fun by racing, that it's not only for guys. So for me, there is a lot about giving an example and encouraging girls that, they can do a stereotypical typical things for boys, like play the football, do the sport, etc., etc. But also, if you are a manager, right, you can ask if you are you're a team member of a team where you have also women. You can ask them like, how do you feel? Like, is there anything that I can do to, I don't know, give you more space, or just to ask like if you hear or see that there are women who are never speaking up, you can ask like gently, like, wait, what do you think, right? So this is another thing. What else? I love the idea of I met one president of the company who said, I will never take part in any panel, any meeting if there is no women invited. It's perfect, because this is about the sponsorship, right? This is about this putting the wind into the wings, instead of, meeting and telling the girl, oh, you need to be more vocal, or you need to be more persistent, or need to be more aggressive in a way you talk, Hey, maybe make some space for the women, and then they, will be heard better. So those are the things that come up on my mind. As a school, you have a lot to do, because you can bring the role models, you can, as you are doing today, right? But you can invite experts who are girls who are making the games. So there would be an example in the media and surrounding around us that you can see, oh yeah, she's doing this and she's doing that, right? So this is a lot to do.
You agree? It's being more aware, being more reflective, and
sensitive,
being kinder, I would say.
Yeah. Being kind is always good.
I have my homework then.
Great.
I think we covered a lot. Thank you very much, Agnieszka. Thank you, Julia, for interviewing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Joanna, for being here. It's
you.
actually our story with Joanna is exactly, she was showing up on the events and me too, and this
Yes.
here we are suddenly.
True, true.
Right. Thank you for spending this time with me, and Joanna, I will apply for the, for the role of
Yes.
ambassador. Hopefully,
Please
you'll
do. I love
Yeah.
you. I'd love
Being
for you to
welcome for
be
the next one.
also, to
Cool.
meet up for the coffee as well, if you're able in
Yeah.
Warsaw or Digital
Definitely.
Dragons.
Definitely,
So
we'll meet. Take
awesome.
care.
And guys, to the
Take care.
audience, thank you very much for joining us. I think we will continue this habit of running some webinars. I hope CD PROJEKT RED will join us on the next webinars, as we already had 2 and they were very successful. So thank you very much.
Thank you for all questions as well. Take care.
Yes, thank you.
Take care.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
everyone for joining. It's been a blast.
Thanks.
Have a good evening.
Bye.
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 Bye. Bye.